found yourself when you came to New York, I think, is when you shifted from the evangelical side to more of the Episcopal side, and then found yourself
Yes.
working at MJHS, which is
Hmm.
a Jewish organization or
Yeah.
organization. So like you changed, I mean, it's still Christianity, but you totally shifted the way that you practice it,
Hmm.
and also obviously your mindset around what it means to be a Christian. And then you found yourself working with other chaplains that are from different faiths, working for a different
Yeah.
organization, and then you're working with other chaplains that are represent. How does that feel? That must feel really uplifting, I would imagine.
It's very uplifting. The thing that has been such a gift for me has been ever since I left um, the high school I worked at and left my hometown. I finally decided to express my faith in a way that I felt had been authentic to me almost the whole time. Um, but for some reason, I didn't do that prior. And it was because I was trying to be a positive influence in a negative space. And so to remain, I guess, trustworthy and intelligible, I kind of, didn't fully, uh, go to, participate in interfaith things or participate in
Mhm.
progressive churches. I was trying to be a um, kind of yeah, just like a influence in a space that was different than what I resonated with.
Right.
But then when I moved here and I started working as a chaplain, I joined the Episcopal Church, um, which, theologically and um, when it comes to social issues and things, I align with them very much. And it should be normal, but it was so interesting for me and new to be at a church where I'm like, I'm gonna probably agree with everything that's being said, and not because I'm blindly accepting it, but it's just uh uh this is genuinely who I am. And then going to work, I've never wanted to be the type that, tried to convert people to different, faiths or views. And so, now working in chaplaincy where, my boss is a rabbi, my mentor is also a rabbi. Um, I have colleagues who are Catholic priests. I have colleagues who are evangelical pastors. I have colleagues who are different, you know, uh, um, I have a friend who's a Buddhist chaplain. It's a beautiful thing to get to experience something that I felt like for many years I have longed to be a part of, something so diverse but also unified, and I feel like I'm getting to do that. It's such a gift.
Yeah, it is an interfaith community within
Mhm.
that, it seems,
Yeah, definitely.
which is beautiful.
Yeah.
This goes to show you that if you want to be cooperative and you want to be compassionate and learn how to live and work with one another, this is an example of how that's happening, and it's happening
Hmm.
skillfully. Yeah, which was another reason why I wanted to have you on, because I think that it's,
Yeah.
especially in the world that we're living in right now, I think that it's very
Mm.
important that it's like, fine, there we may have our differences in the way that we live our lives or in whatever your political views or your religious views might be, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be kind or considerate or mindful
Right.
or respectful. You don't have to agree. You can agree to disagree. However, that was one of the things that you and I clicked on, was because
Yeah.
even though I am not a practicing fundamentalist Christian, I didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. As a matter of
Hmm.
fact, I see more commonalities between different philosophical and spiritual teachings than I ever have. And that common thread is love yourself and love your neighbor
hmm
and treat each other with respect. So I'm excited for you that you get to work in that kind of an environment. And I hope that more of those environments are created, that we find
hmm
communion, that we're able to find communion under the umbrella of some kind of faith. Having something faith in something that is greater than yourself. And what you
hmm
particularly call God, or whatever you want to call the divine, is not so much of an issue, right?
hmm
What's more important is I respect you, you respect me. I value my life and I value your life.
hmm
And this is what we need more of in the world.
hmm
So,
I agree. And, that's kind of how, that's why I love the work that I do, and even more so the work of chaplains that have been doing it for many years, and have really become, um, excellent at it. Because the thing is, it doesn't matter what your religion is. When a chaplain comes and visits you, they can assess, regardless if you're religious or not, they can assess what kind of hope you have. They can assess what level of peace you have about your situation. They can assess where and how you find meaning in this life, and they can help, ritualize the moments uh that need closure or acknowledgement, and they can be a comforting presence for someone in distress. And that's something we all, I think, um, we all can do degrees of that, and it's less, and that's why, we call chaplains, they're spiritual care providers. It's not religious care. It's the things of the spirit. It's things of hope, love, meaning, self-value, comfort, and it's something every human um, could use support in. And that's one of the beautiful things about it. And I think if the whole world could uh, maybe take a page out of that book, we could all find the communion you mentioned um,
yeah,
more easily, more profoundly.
yeah. And how much, I mean, one of the things that you and I touched on in one of our conversations is being able to understand what death means, not just for the person
hmm
that's going through it, but also for the people that are there advocating, visiting, spending time with family members. And that really, and I think that you believe this, that when you understand the role of death in our lives, that it comes you to the point of having much greater care and attention and understanding that this is quite a remarkable thing that we get to do here. We get to be
hmm
alive and have this life. And I know
Yeah.
I know that in being present for my parents' demise and seeing them and going through the grief process, because it's been super long goodbyes here, in fits and starts. Uh, I mean, from my experience, empirically speaking, I believe that kind of view, like you want to understand life, then understand death and come to terms with it so that you can live your life fully.
Yeah. I think the term existential crisis is maybe poorly named by it being called a crisis.
Yeah.
Because in short, it's just it's when it dawns on you that life is short, and the time I have is not infinite, and I need to be a good steward of the time I have so that I can live my life in a way that is authentic to myself, and what have you. And so, when I had a existential crisis and during the pandemic, it led me to leave my job and move across the country and find new work. And it's been a gift to me. It's termed a crisis, but it was more of a gift that am so thankful. I realized um, how real and short life is, and that I needed to act on that. and it made me wish I had had that realization sooner. Um, and and so I think it is such a gift for all of us to have that relationship with death and realizing the finitude of life, so that it pushes us to lead the best lives that we can and to make decisions based on a greater sense of urgency um, than we often live with, because we always just stay on autopilot and assume tomorrow is going to be the same and next year the same after that.
Yeah. Or not really focus on what's imperative. I I've had the experience of watching one parent that um, not really connecting, not understanding their children, not understanding
Mm,
what makes them tick, and caring to know, you know, and then they're
hmm
coming to the end of their life and they're just like they just want their children around them. But the children are like,
mm,
we don't really have that kind of relationship with you. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
not like you love the person any less because they are your parent, but there is a sense of detachment. And I think that's such a shame, to
hmm
have that experience as a child and then what it must what it must be like for the person that's dying and saying, okay, all this time has gone by and I don't even know who this person is. Like
hmm
you were part of the
Yeah.
process of giving them life and then you have no idea who they are. You know,
hmm
it's I've had the experience with, my mother, we were able to work through our stuff before she got really ill. And
hmm
so there was so much grief about losing her friendship, you know.
hmm
But with the other parent, it's like this person did not take the time to know you when they were well
mm
enough to know you, and now
Yeah.
it's too late.
hmm
I mean, you never know what kind of epiphanies people are going to have at their end of their life. Do you see that? Do you see that people that have completely been on another track and come to the end of life and have these come to Jesus moments, they call them? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do you see that? I mean, because it's got to be like, I could imagine that you've seen a lot of what people go
hmm
through at the end of their life and watch
Yeah.
people go through the process of death. What have you been in your experiences? Do you see people turning corners or please share? I'd like to know.
I, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different responses to realizing you're at end of life. Some of them are um, those epiphanies of, oh, like, imagine, like that feeling of, "Oh, I wish I had this epiphany sooner, that this was really important to me, that this relationship was really important to me." And a lot of times people who uh, have unresolved issues hang on a lot. They hang on and suffer. They may live, weeks, month longer, and suffer because since something is unresolved within them, they their body, their subconsciously, keeps going until they try to resolve it. You see the same thing happen sometimes where someone has a beloved family member who has to travel out of town to see them at the end of life, and somehow the patient will, even if they're totally non-responsive, non-verbal, they just hang on until that person comes. And then you have the same thing with caregivers, the adult children oftentimes, of their dying parent, and they realize that there was some healing needed in the relationship, or they realized there was something they wish they had done differently, and trying to bring that resolution and closure um, in a way that um, that can bring a little sense of healing before for them. whatever that looks like.
Right. Yeah. So you see it
Mhm.
all.
Yeah. And I also see people 100% at peace with what they're experiencing, and they're smiling till the very end, until, even if when pain comes and limitations come, um, they just have this trust that uh, that's where they're supposed to be at this time. And
Those do you see in comparison to all the others? How many people do you see that are ready to go consciously and they let go and you watch them shift? How many of
yeah,
those percentage wise do you see?
and I would have to guess, but it's sometimes, maybe a fourth, or it's more than I would think, but it's also, it's hard to put that together because I have so many patients who are just dementia or non-verbal, non-responsive, and you have no idea what they're thinking or feeling. When it comes to patients who are alert and oriented enough to talk about things, I would say, definitely less than half, but it's also not unheard of either.
Mm,
Um, in a lot of people, it's their religious beliefs that uh, give them a lot of the ability to cope effectively. Um, they have this sense that there's a God who loves them and will make sure they're okay for forever, and that
right,
all is forgiven, and that even if there are regrets, that it's okay that they happened, and it's something moved on from.
right. And it's part of life. Like we're going to make mistakes.
Right.
There's no, we learn from them. Right. And forgiving yourself too. I think that sometimes,
Exactly.
yeah, sometimes people have a hard time with forgiving themselves.
hmm
Yeah. So
But
do
a
you,
lot of times,
hmm,
go ahead.
no, go, I want to
I was
hear.
going to say that sometimes the people, based on talking to family members or friends of patients, you uh, sometimes never know what's really inside a person until they're faced with the scary truth that they're dying. Um,
Yeah,
and so it's kind of a hard thing to have a sense of, prior how you would respond to it.
right. Yeah, yeah. Do you find that, I mean, you were telling me before we started filming that you're like this week went by very fast because you were just busy and I said and I asked you, did I guess there were people dying and you said, yeah, there are people dying all the time. But I mean, do you feel like that burns you out? Do you ever get to a point where like, gosh, I'm sick of people dying? I mean, have you gotten to that? Is that part of it? Or
Yeah,
because you're a chaplain, you're just like, it's just another day at the office. I'm not perturbed by this.
yeah, I a lot of times when people are at the end of their lives, they are physically suffering or they have, yeah, pain. No one wants to be bedbound and minimally responsive. And, I hate having a cold, so I can't imagine how much, how hard it is to be someone who's at the end of their life, especially from some form of illness or, you know, diagnosis. And so, because of the death to me often marks the moment where the suffering ends.
Mm.
And that is something sometimes it's hard for me not to see it as a positive thing.
Mhm.
I see, I'll get it's just like how we all get emails in the morning about reports and things. I get death reports that show me who died overnight, and um So not every time, because not everyone suffers, but most of my patients, I would say, suffer at the end. And most of the time when I see that they passed, I have a sense of relief for them, thinking, oh, good, like they're not in pain anymore. They're not suffering anymore. And so I often get more discouraged by the patients who are on hospice care, but then keep living and living and lasting a long time. Because that's the suffering that burns me out. The death doesn't bother me to be around. It's the prolonged suffering that doesn't seem to end. That's what bothers me. That's what um, causes me to have bad days sometimes.
Thank you for saying that.
Hmm.
That's a very real thing. Yeah, which also makes it a great thing that you also interact with family members because that's how you and I connected,
Hmm.
was that we could speak to it and I could say things that you weren't like, oh, other
Right.
people are like, oh, it's so interesting when people say, oh, I hope they get better. I'm like, we're past that point.
Yeah.
There is no getting better here. There is just a matter of how peaceful will this passing and this process be?
Hmm.
That's the main concern. So thank you. And I appreciate that you were like, yeah, I'm available to you or any of your family members that want to
Hmm.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is very helpful. I think that sometimes the people that are left behind are the ones that are really suffering
Hmm.
in this process. And I mean, and then some people have a hard time letting go. You know, I mean, do you think that sometimes family members hold them here? Because that's something that I was very conscious with my mother. It was like, well, yes, advocate for sure, make sure that she's getting the best care possible. Yes. However, you're not trying to keep her here. You know, we're not trying to prolong a really horrible disease.
Yeah.
Do you find that some family members keep their people here, keep their folks here?
So one very common conversation I have with caregivers, such typically adult children or spouses, um, is they start to, you know, it, they have that moment where they realize their loved one is suffering a lot, and that that death is a better alternative to the suffering. And then they have the logical thought is that, well, then I guess I want what's best for them. So does that mean I want them to die? And having that thought about someone you love can be very um, guilt-inducing. And I I'm constantly reassuring people it's okay that that thought is okay. It's a very normal thought. I talk to people all the time about this. Um, and the best definition of love I have come across is that love is wanting what is absolutely best for someone else, no matter what that is.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes, the best thing is for suffering to end if healing and cure is not in sight, um, and prolonged pain is not the best thing. Um, and That being said, I think one conversation I try to encourage caregivers to have with their loved one is to speak about giving them permission um, to die, giving them permission, saying it's okay, I'll be okay, our family will be okay. You can rest. Don't hold on for me. It's okay.
Yep.
And I'm amazed sometimes how often, you know, conversations like that make a difference. Even and some patients are totally nonverbal, non-responsive, but I think they really um, hear those things they're being told.
Hmm.
And so I do see people reluctant to have that conversation, like you mentioned, and it's something I try to encourage gently and sensitively, only when I think it'd be uh, appreciated. But it's a healthy thing.
And sometimes people need permission to
Hmm.
verbalize those thoughts that they have within themselves and have someone else.
That's true.
It's almost like, oh, thank you for letting me know that I'm not a horrible person for thinking that too. You know,
Hmm.
like really
Yeah.
wanting these people to be out of pain, especially when they've been in this state, of moving,
Hmm.
even going on and off hospice. That's just,
Hmm.
it's like, great, they're on hospice. Well, at least there's more eyes and care there. And then they're off hospice and then they're been living it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank
I
you.
know that's been hard.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you're
Yeah.
saying it. I think that people will benefit from hearing someone such as yourself in the role that you play, hearing that
Yeah.
and not feeling
Thank you.
poorly. But yeah, the work that you're doing in the world is really of great service, because I've been saying this and I said this to a lot of people in the nursing home is the 2 days that are bookends of our lives when we're born and when we die. And so
Hmm.
the same care and amount of love and joy that you would have bringing a child into the world, we want to have the same level of care and respect for when people leave.
That's, I
They're
like that.
the two most
Yeah.
important days of our lives. I mean, yes,
Hmm.
and our lives are littered with other beautiful markers, right, throughout them. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's important, and I think that I'm glad to see that the chaplaincy, that hospice chaplaincy, is also giving death its due respect.
Hmm.
It is an important thing to respect because without it, then life is taken very lightly. And it can be taken
Hmm.
and nobody thinks anything of it. Like you were saying when you were younger, like,
Yeah.
oh, now we're going to go and kill other people? How's that going to help? Like
Hmm.
we're living in a world where we have to galvanize ourselves in truths that are based on love and kindness and service. And of course,
Hmm.
healthy boundaries, but yeah,
Yeah.
love and service. So thank you for the work that you do.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, and I thank you for being here. We've been here almost an hour, so we could talk about this forever. Uh, we certainly could, but I thank you, and I hope we get to see each other again uh,
Yeah.
sooner than later, and not just because of Mom's passing.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everything that
You're
you're
very
doing
welcome.
there in the world, and thank you for giving us your time and
Yeah.
your wisdom, sharing your wisdom.
Thank you.
Oh, you're
Yeah, I
very welcome.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Sure, sure. All right, we're going to sign off here and we'll see you next time at Skillful Living and Artful Life. Thank you for joining us.